I've always believed that trust is the foundation of a marriage, the invisible thread that holds two people together through the chaos of life. For 16 years, I thought that thread between me and Clara was unbreakable. We'd built a life in the quiet suburbs of Maplewood, a place where the streets were lined with oak trees and the neighbors waved as they mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings. Our house was modest but ours. A two-story colonial with a wraparound porch, a garden Clara tended with care, and a kitchen where we'd spent countless evenings laughing over glasses of wine. We had two kids, Emma and Noah, who were the center of our universe. I was a high school history teacher, and Clara ran a small bakery downtown, her hands always dusted with flour, her smile bright enough to light up the gloomiest days. To me, she was perfect, or so I thought. It was a Tuesday in early June when the first crack appeared in the foundation of our life. I remember the date because it was the last day of the school year, a day filled with the usual chaos of grading final essays and signing yearbooks. I was exhausted but happy, looking forward to summer days with Clara and the kids. Maybe a trip to the coast, lazy mornings in bed, the kind of moments that recharge you for the grind of another year. I'd stayed late at school to finish some paperwork, and by the time I got home, the house was quiet. The kids were at Clara's parents' for the week, a tradition to give us a breather after the school year ended. I expected to find Clara in the kitchen, maybe baking something new for the bakery, her hair tied back in that messy bun I loved. But the kitchen was dark, the counters clean, no trace of her usual flour-dusted chaos. I called her name as I dropped my bag by the door. No answer. The house felt oddly still, like it was holding its breath. I checked the living room, the backyard, even the garage, thinking maybe she'd gone out to run an errand. Her car was in the driveway, though, which made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't quite explain. I pulled out my phone and texted her. *Hey, where are you? Just got home. No response. I waited a few minutes, pacing the living room, then called her. Straight to voicemail. That's when the unease started to settle in, heavy and cold, like a stone in my gut. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, thinking maybe she'd fallen asleep or was taking a bath. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open, expecting to see her curled up under the covers. Instead, I saw her phone on the nightstand, screen lit up with a notification. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe because it was so unlike her to leave it behind, or maybe because some part of me already knew something was wrong. Her phone was locked, but the notification was from a name I didn't recognize. Elliot. The message preview read, *Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. Elliot. The name hit me like a punch. I didn't know any Elliot, and Clara had never mentioned one. My mind raced, trying to piece together who he could be. A coworker, a friend, a customer at the bakery? But the tone of the message, the casual intimacy of it, didn't feel like any of those things. It felt personal. Too personal. I stood there, staring at her phone, my thumb hovering over the screen, as if I could will it to unlock and reveal its secrets. I didn't know her passcode, never needed to. We'd always trusted each other, or so I thought. But now, that trust felt like a fragile thing, teetering on the edge of a cliff. I put the phone down and sat on the bed, trying to calm the storm in my head. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Elliot was a new friend, someone she'd met at the community center where she took yoga classes. Maybe it was a group thing, a casual meetup. But the same place part gnawed at me. It implied routine, secrecy, something she hadn't shared with me. I tried to push the thoughts away, to focus on the life we'd built, the love we'd shared. Clara wasn't the type to hide things. She was open, honest, the kind of person who'd leave her heart on the table for anyone to see. But the longer I sat there, the more the silence of the house pressed in, amplifying every doubt. I decided to wait for her. I'd ask her about Elliot, give her a chance to explain. I wasn't the kind of man who jumped to conclusions or let jealousy cloud his judgment. But as the minutes ticked by, the unease grew. I wandered the house, looking for clues, hating myself for it. In the laundry room, I found a shirt of hers I didn't recognize. A sleek, black blouse, nothing like the soft cottons she usually wore. Smelled faintly of cologne, not mine. My heart thudded in my chest, but I told myself it could be anything. A gift, a borrowed item, a mistake. I folded it carefully and put it back, trying to ignore the way my hands shook. By 9 p.m., she still wasn't home. I called her parents, just to make sure she hadn't gone to pick up the kids early. They confirmed the kids were fine, asleep in their guest room. Clara hadn't called them, hadn't stopped by. I tried her phone again, voicemail. I texted her again, this time more direct. Asterisk Clara? Where are you? I'm worried. Asterisk no response. I sat on the couch, staring at the front door, willing it to open. The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing minute, each second stretching into eternity. At 11:17 p.m., I heard the faint sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Relief flooded me, followed by a fresh wave of dread. I stood, smoothing my shirt, trying to look calm even as my pulse raced. The door opened, and there she was, Clara, my Clara. Her hair loose around her shoulders, her cheeks flushed. She was wearing that black blouse, the one from the laundry, and her eyes widened when she saw me standing there. James, she said, her voice bright but tinged with something, nervousness maybe? You're home early. Early, I said, keeping my tone even. School's out. I got home around 6. Where were you? She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough to make my stomach lurch. Oh, I was at the bakery. Last-minute order came in and I had to help with the prep. You know how it is. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to believe her, wanted to let her words wash away the doubt. But that message, asterisk Elliot, same place asterisk, burned in my mind. Your phone's upstairs, I said, watching her closely. You left it here. Her smile faltered. Did I? God, I'm so scatterbrained lately. Must have forgotten it in the rush. Who's Elliot? The question slipped out before I could stop it, sharp and unyielding. Her face froze, just for a moment, but it was enough. I saw it. The flicker of panic, the way her lips parted as if searching for words that wouldn't come. Elliot? She repeated, her voice too light, too casual. Oh, he's just a supplier. New guy we're working with for the bakery. Why? A supplier, I said, nodding slowly. He texted you, said he can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. She laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. Oh, that. Yeah, he's meeting me to drop off some samples. At the bakery. You know, flour, sugar, that kind of thing. At 11 at night? I asked, my voice steady but cold. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her eyes darting away from mine. It's not like that, James. You're reading too much into it. Am I? I took a step closer, my hands clenched at my sides. Because it doesn't feel like I am. She sighed, running a hand through her hair, and for a moment, I saw the Clara I knew. Tired, exasperated, but still mine. James, I'm exhausted. Can we not do this right now? I've had a long day, and I just want to shower and go to bed. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but something in her eyes stopped me. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was my own desperation to hold onto the life we had. I nodded, stepping back. Fine, we'll talk tomorrow. She gave me a small, grateful smile and headed upstairs. I listened to the sound of her footsteps, the creak of the bathroom door, the rush of water from the shower. But the unease didn't leave me. It settled deeper, wrapping around my heart like a vine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words, her expressions, the way she'd avoided my gaze. I wanted to believe her, but the pieces didn't fit. The blouse, the cologne, the message, the late hour. It all pointed to something I couldn't name, something I wasn't ready to face. The next morning, Clara was up early, bustling around the kitchen like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed softly as she sliced fruit for breakfast, and kissed me on the cheek before heading to the bakery. I'll be home by 6, she said, her voice bright. Maybe we can order pizza tonight, just the two of us? Sure, I said, forcing a smile. But as soon as she left, I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I didn't know her passcode, but I knew her well enough to guess. Emma's birthday, 0412. The screen unlocked, and my heart sank as I opened her messages. There it was, the thread with Elliot. Dozens of texts going back weeks. Miss you already. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. My hands shook as I scrolled, each word a knife twisting in my chest. There were no explicit details, but the tone was unmistakable. This wasn't about flour or sugar. This was something else entirely. I sat on the edge of the bed, her phone heavy in my hand, my world crumbling around me. Clara, my Clara, was slipping away, and I hadn't even seen it coming. The life we'd built, the trust I'd taken for granted, it was all a lie. But as the shock gave way to anger, something else took root: resolve. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. If Clara thought she could hide this, she was wrong. I'd find out the truth, every last detail, and when I did, I'd make sure she felt the weight of what she'd done. The days after finding those texts were like walking through a fog. Everything familiar but distorted, every moment tinged with suspicion. Clara went about her routine as if nothing had changed, her laughter filling the house, her touch warm when she brushed past me in the kitchen. But I saw her differently now. Every smile felt like a mask, every word a potential lie. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than a handful of texts to unravel the truth. I needed to know who Elliot was, how deep this went, and why Clara, my Clara, had let this happen. So I became a detective in my own life, piecing together clues while pretending everything was fine. I started small, careful not to tip her off. That first morning after unlocking her phone, I copied down Elliot's number and the details from their messages. There weren't many specifics, just vague plans to meet, mentions of the usual spot, and words that burned into my memory: "You make me feel alive." I didn't recognize the area code, so I ran a quick search online. It was local, which meant Elliot wasn't some out-of-town supplier like Clara had claimed. He was here, in Maplewood, close enough to weave himself into her life. The thought made my skin crawl, but I pushed it down. Anger wouldn't help me now. I needed facts. I couldn't access her phone again without risking her noticing, so I turned to other sources. Clara's bakery, Sweet Haven, was my first stop. I'd always loved visiting her there. The smell of fresh bread, the hum of customers, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about a new recipe. Now it felt like enemy territory. I went in the next afternoon, claiming I was just stopping by for coffee. The staff, a mix of college kids and older locals, greeted me warmly, but I watched their faces closely, searching for any hint of unease, any sign they knew something I didn't. Nothing stood out. I lingered at the counter, chatting with Sarah, the manager, while scanning the room. No unfamiliar men lurking. No one named Elliot on the employee roster I casually asked about. Any new suppliers lately? I asked Sarah, keeping my tone light as I sipped my coffee. She frowned, thinking. Not really. We've been sticking with our usuals. Miller's for flour, that co-op for produce. Why? Just curious, I said, smiling. Clara mentioned someone named Elliot. Thought he might be new. Sarah's brow furrowed, but she shook her head. Doesn't ring a bell. Maybe she meant one of the delivery guys. Maybe. I agreed, but my gut told me otherwise. Clara's story was unraveling, and the bakery wasn't the answer. I left feeling both relieved and frustrated. No clues, but no confirmation of my worst fears either. Yet, back home, I dug deeper. Clara's laptop was password protected, but she'd used the same one for years. The kids' initials and our anniversary. It felt wrong, violating her privacy like this, but the betrayal I suspected justified it. Her email was a dead end, mostly work-related messages, invoices, and newsletters. But her browser history was another story. She hadn't cleared it in weeks, and among the recipes and parenting blogs were searches that stopped me cold. Hotels near Maplewood, romantic dinner spots, weekend getaways for two. My heart pounded as I clicked through. She'd visited sites for a boutique hotel downtown, a place called The Willow, and a wine bar called Vino Amore. The dates lined up with nights she'd claimed to be working late or meeting friends. I cross-referenced her calendar, which she synced with mine. Sure enough, those late nights had vague entries like out with Jen or bakery meeting. Jen, her best friend, hadn't been around much lately, and I doubted the bakery needed meetings at 10 p.m. I drove to the Willow that evening, telling Clara I had a staff meeting. The hotel was small, elegant, tucked away on a quiet street, a perfect place for secrets. The lobby smelled of lavender, and the clerk, a young woman with a polite smile, looked up as I approached. I spun a story about planning a surprise anniversary stay, asking if they'd had any recent bookings under Clara's name. The clerk checked her system, her fingers tapping the keyboard. No bookings under that name, she said, but we don't always take names for short stays. Short stays? I asked, feigning curiosity. You know, a few hours, she said, then caught herself blushing. I mean, we get a lot of business travelers, quick naps between meetings. I nodded, but my mind was racing. A few hours. Not a full night, not a weekend, just enough time for what? I thanked her and left, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. Vino Amore was next, a cozy wine bar a few blocks away. I didn't go in, just parked across the street and watched. Couples came and went, laughing, holding hands. No Clara, no mysterious man. But the place felt right. Intimate, dimly lit, the kind of spot where secrets could hide in plain sight. That night, I couldn't look at Clara without seeing those texts, those searches. She was cooking dinner, humming as she stirred a pot of pasta, and I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But I held back. I needed to know who Elliot was, and I needed proof that wouldn't let her wiggle out with excuses. So I kept playing the part of the devoted husband, kissing her cheek, asking about her day, all while my mind churned with plans. The breakthrough came a week later. Clara announced she had to meet a supplier after work, promising to be home by 9. I nodded, told her to have fun, and waited until her car pulled out of the driveway. Then I grabbed my keys and followed her. I'd never done anything like this, tailing my own wife like some private investigator, but the betrayal I felt justified it. Her car wound through Maplewood's quiet streets, heading downtown. I stayed a few cars back, my heart pounding, half hoping I was wrong, half dreading I was right. She parked outside Vino Amore. I pulled into a lot across the street, watching as she stepped out, her hair loose, wearing that black blouse again. She glanced around, then walked inside. I waited, my hands gripping the wheel, my breath shallow. 10 minutes later, a man arrived, tall, broad-shouldered, maybe late 30s, with dark hair and a confident stride. He wore a tailored jacket, nothing like the casual jeans and tees I favored. He entered the bar, and my stomach twisted. I didn't know his face, but I knew his name, Elliot. I waited, every minute an eternity. An hour later, they emerged, standing close, her hand brushing his arm as they laughed. My vision blurred with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed more than this. I needed undeniable proof. They walked to a car, his I assumed, and drove off. I followed, keeping my distance, until they pulled into the Willows parking lot. They entered the hotel together, her head tilted toward him, his hand on the small of her back. I didn't follow them inside. I didn't need to. The image was seared into my mind, a wound that wouldn't heal. I drove home, my thoughts a storm of anger and grief. Clara came home at 9:15, her cheeks flushed, her smile too bright. "Sorry I'm late," she said, kicking off her shoes. The supplier was chatty. "Elliot?" I asked, my voice calm despite the fire in my chest. She froze, just for a second, then nodded. "Yeah, he's particular about the orders." I didn't push, couldn't, not yet, but I had enough to start planning. The next day I called a friend, Mike, who worked in IT and owed me a favor. I asked him to trace Elliot's number, to dig up whatever he could. Within hours, I had a name. Elliot Grayson, a real estate agent, 38, married, no kids, living in a condo downtown. His social media was public, filled with photos of him at networking events, smiling with clients, and, most damning, a few shots at Vino Amore, tagged with Clara's bakery account. I recognized her in the background of one, her face blurred but unmistakable. I hired a private investigator the next week, a discreet woman named Linda who came recommended by a colleague. I gave her everything: Elliot's name, the hotel, the wine bar, Clara's schedule. I didn't want to hear half-truths or excuses. I wanted evidence, cold and hard. Linda worked fast. Within days, she sent me a file. Photos of Clara and Elliot at the wine bar, at the hotel, even a grainy shot of them kissing in his car. There were receipts from the Willow, confirming short stays under Elliot's name, paid in cash. There were texts intercepted somehow. I didn't ask how, detailing their plans, their feelings, their lies. I wish we could stay longer, Clara had written. I hate leaving you. Elliot's reply, asterisk, soon we'll figure it out. I'm all in. Asterisk, all in. The words echoed in my head, fueling the rage that had been simmering for weeks. Clara wasn't just straying. She was planning a future with this man, a life that didn't include me or our kids. I thought of Emma and Noah, their trusting faces, their belief in our family. I thought of the years I'd spent building a life with Clara, the sacrifices, the love I'd poured into her. And now this, but I wasn't the man she thought I was, not anymore. The old James, the trusting husband, was gone. In his place was someone new, someone who wouldn't let this betrayal go unpunished. I started planning my revenge that night, sitting in my office with Linda's file spread out before me. It wouldn't be quick or impulsive. It would be precise, calculated, a reckoning that would hit Clara and Elliot where it hurt most. I didn't want to just confront her, to watch her cry and beg for forgiveness. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to lose what she valued, to see her world crumble as mine had. And Elliot, he'd pay too. His perfect life, his smug confidence, his marriage. I'd tear it all apart. But I'd do it carefully, leaving no trace of my hand. This wasn't about violence or shouting matches. This was about justice, cold and unrelenting. I began by gathering more information. I contacted Elliot's wife, Anna, through a burner email, posing as a concerned friend. I sent her a few of Linda's photos, anonymized, with a note. You deserve to know. I didn't expect a reply, but I didn't need one. The seed was planted. Next, I targeted Clara's bakery. Sweet Haven was her pride, her dream, and I knew how to hit it without touching her directly. I dug into her financials using my access to our joint accounts. There were discrepancies, small withdrawals, unexplained expenses, likely tied to her time with Elliot. I tipped off the IRS anonymously, suggesting they audit the bakery's books. It wouldn't destroy her, but it would keep her busy, stressed, distracted. For Elliot, I went further. His real estate business relied on reputation, so I started chipping away at it. Fake reviews on his listings, subtle complaints to his agency, whispers to clients about missed deadlines and shady deals. I used burner accounts, proxies, anything to keep my name out of it. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, turning my pain into power. Clara and Elliot thought they could build something on the ruins of my life. They were wrong. By the time Clara came home that night, oblivious to the storm I was brewing, I was ready. I smiled, kissed her, played the part of the husband she thought she knew. But inside, I was sharpening the blade of my revenge, waiting for the moment to strike. The weeks following my discoveries were a tightrope walk, balancing the life I presented to Clara with the silent war I waged behind her back. Every morning, I woke up next to her, her breath soft against the pillow, her face serene, and I felt a surge of rage so potent it threatened to choke me. But I swallowed it, smiled, made her coffee, and played the part of the devoted husband. She had no idea the ground beneath her was crumbling, that every step she took was leading her closer to a fall. My revenge wasn't about confrontation, not yet. It was about dismantling her world piece by piece, letting her feel the loss before she even understood why. And Elliot, her smug partner in betrayal, was in my sights too. This wasn't just about Clara. It was about both of them, their shared delusion that they could rewrite our lives without consequence. I'd already set the wheels in motion. The anonymous tip to the IRS about Sweet Haven's books had triggered an audit, and Clara was drowning in paperwork. She came home each night exhausted, her usual spark dimmed, muttering about tax codes and missing receipts. "It's a nightmare, James," she'd say, rubbing her temples. "I don't know how this happened." I'd nod, offer sympathy, even help her organize files, all while knowing I'd planted the seed. The bakery was her heart, her legacy, and watching it teeter under scrutiny was the first cut. But it wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the betrayal as deeply as I did, to know what it was like to have something precious ripped away. Elliot was next. His real estate business was already taking hits from the fake reviews and complaints I'd seeded online. His agency's Yelp page was littered with one-star ratings, carefully worded critiques about missed appointments, unreturned calls, and questionable ethics. I'd used burner accounts, routing them through VPNs to cover my tracks. His social media, once a polished showcase of success, was now a battleground of doubt. Clients were pulling back, and I'd heard through a mutual contact that his boss had called him in for a talk. But I wasn't done. Anna, Elliot's wife, had received my anonymous email with the photos of him and Clara. I didn't know what she'd done with them, but the silence from her end suggested she was biding her time, just as I was. I wanted her to act, to bring her own storm into Elliot's life, but I couldn't rely on her alone. So I dug deeper. Using Linda, the private investigator, I got access to Elliot's financials. He wasn't as careful as he thought. Credit card statements showed regular charges at the Willow and Vino Amore, along with cash withdrawals that lined up with Clara's late nights. I sent another anonymous tip, this time to his agency's ethics board, attaching a few of Linda's photos and a list of transactions suggesting he was misusing company funds for personal expenses. It wasn't airtight, but it was enough to raise questions, to tighten the noose. I also contacted a few of his bigger clients, posing as a concerned colleague, hinting at issues with his reliability. Each move was a pebble in the avalanche I was building. Clara, meanwhile, was unraveling. The audit was only part of it. I'd started sowing discord in subtler ways, small disruptions to her routine, like accidentally misplacing her keys or forgetting to pass along messages from suppliers. I'd also reached out to Jen, her best friend, under the guise of planning a surprise for Clara. Jen, oblivious to the affair, mentioned she hadn't seen Clara much lately, confirming my suspicions that Clara's girls' nights were lies. I planted a seed there too, casually mentioning I'd seen Clara at Vino Amore with a guy I didn't know. Jen's confusion was palpable, and I knew she'd bring it up with Clara eventually. The pressure was mounting, and Clara's smiles were growing thinner, her excuses more strained. One evening, as we sat at dinner, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down, a move I'd seen too many times. "Work?" I asked, my voice neutral. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just Sarah checking in." I nodded, but my eyes lingered on her phone. Later, when she was in the shower, I checked it. The passcode still worked. Emma's birthday. A new message from Elliot. Asterisk, this is getting risky. Anna's asking questions. We need to talk. Asterisk, my blood boiled, but I didn't react. Instead, I forwarded the message to my own phone, then deleted the evidence from hers. I was building a dossier, a record of their betrayal that would be my weapon when the time came. The final piece of my plan came together in late July. I'd learned through Linda that Elliot was hosting an open house for a high-end property, a chance to impress his agency's top clients. It was the perfect stage for his downfall. I contacted a local blogger who covered real estate, feeding them an anonymous tip about Elliot's unprofessional conduct with a married woman, complete with a few of Linda's photos. I didn't name Clara, but the implication was clear. The blogger took the bait, publishing a veiled post about ethical concerns in the local market, hinting at a prominent agent's personal misconduct. It spread like wildfire on social media, and by the time of the open house, whispers were circulating. I attended, blending in with the crowd, watching as Elliot's confident smile faltered under the weight of curious glances and hushed conversations. Anna was there too, her face a mask of controlled fury. I didn't stay long, but I saw enough to know the cracks in his world were widening. Clara felt it too, though she didn't know why. The night of the open house, She came home late, her eyes red, her voice shaky. "Rough day?" I asked, pouring her a glass of wine. She nodded, sipping it quickly. "Just a lot going on. The audit, some drama with a supplier. It's overwhelming." "Which supplier?" I pressed, keeping my tone light. "Elliot again?" Her hand froze on the glass, and for a moment, I thought she'd crack. But she recovered, forcing a smile. "No, not him. Just other stuff." I let it go, but the seed was planted. She was rattled, and I was just getting started. The next phase was the cruelest, the one that would hit her where it hurt most. Her reputation, her community, her sense of self. I'd always known Clara cared deeply about how others saw her, her bakery, her role as a mother, her place in Maplewood's tight-knit circles. So I weaponized that. I created an anonymous social media account, one that looked like it belonged to a local gossip. I posted vague but pointed comments on community boards. Asterisk heard a local business owner's been stepping out on her family. Sad when trust gets broken like that. Asterisk I didn't name her, but Maplewood was small and rumors spread fast. I saw the first signs at the farmer's market, where Clara's stall was quieter than usual, neighbors whispering as they passed. Then came the final blow. I'd learned from Linda that Clara and Elliot had planned a weekend getaway, using the excuse of a baking conference to cover her absence. I waited until the day before, when Clara was packing, her mood lighter than it had been in weeks. "Excited for the conference?" I asked, helping her fold clothes. "Yeah," she said, smiling. "It'll be good to get away, clear my head." I nodded, my stomach churning. That night, I sent Anna a final email, this time with the hotel's name, the dates, and a photo of Clara and Elliot at Vino Amore. I also tipped off the bakery's biggest client, a local cafe chain, about the audit and rumors of mismanagement. By morning, Clara's phone was buzzing with cancellations and questions. She left for her conference distracted, her face pale. I knew what she'd find when she got to the hotel. Anna, waiting in the lobby, armed with proof of her husband's betrayal. I didn't need to be there to imagine the scene. Anna's fury, Elliot's panic, Clara's world collapsing as her lies were exposed. When Clara came home 2 days later, she was a wreck. Her eyes were swollen, her hair disheveled, her voice barely a whisper. "The conference was a disaster," she said, dropping her bag. "Everything's falling apart." I hugged her, my touch gentle, my words soft. "It'll be okay," I lied. "We'll get through it." But we wouldn't. Not together. The bakery lost its biggest client, and the audit was uncovering irregularities that threatened its future. The community whispers grew louder, and Clara's friends were pulling back, their trust shaken. Elliot's career was in freefall. His agency had suspended him, and Anna had kicked him out. Their affair, once a secret, was now a scandal, tearing through their lives like a wildfire. I waited a week, letting the wreckage settle. Then, one quiet evening, I sat Clara down. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. I laid out the photos, the texts, the receipts, everything Linda had given me. Her face crumpled, tears streaming, but I didn't stop. I told her I knew about Elliot, about the hotel, the lies. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I'd take the kids, that she'd lost everything she'd built. She sobbed, begged, tried to explain, but I was done listening. I'd been her husband, her partner, her fool. Now I was her judge. The divorce papers were served the next day. I moved out with Emma and Noah, renting a small place across town. Clara stayed in the house, surrounded by the ruins of her choices. The bakery closed a month later, unable to recover from the audit and the lost business. Elliot's marriage ended, his career in tatters. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. Revenge wasn't about joy, it was about justice. Clara and Elliot had betrayed me, and I'd made sure they paid. The kids were my focus now, my reason to keep going. I'd rebuild, stronger, wiser, while Clara faced the consequences of a life she'd thrown away.